Hi, this is Rookie Vijay here. In this video, we are going to bench test the components that we have unboxed previously. Guys, this is a Intel 10th Gen PC build. So now let's start with opening the CPU socket cover by unhooking the pin. Do not remove the black cover, it will come out automatically after CPU installation. If you look into the processor, there is a golden triangle. So we have to match this golden triangle with the CPU socket triangle. So after matching it, you have to place it properly. Then you have to close the CPU cover. Then rehook the pin. And while rehooking, it will that the black cover will come out automatically. Do not throw the CPU cover, store it. Now place the CPU stock cooler and push the four corners clips into the motherboard. You will hear a click sound while pushing the clips. After installing the CPU cooler, try to lift the motherboard using the cooler so we can check the installation. Now plug the CPU cooler power supply to the CPU fan pin in the motherboard. You don't have to worry about the pin orientation because it will go in only one direction. The motherboard itself shows which RAM slot is going to first connect to the CPU. According to that, we can connect. So we can always connect the RAM to the second slot, that is from the CPU side, or else you can connect to the last slot. So here I have connected to the last slot. Open the RAM clips, then insert the RAM. Then push the RAM from one end. You will hear a click sound. Then go to the next end. If you are using single channel RAM, it is better to install it second slot. Now let's connect the SSD to the motherboard. For that you need a SATA cable. Connect one end of the SATA cable to the motherboard and another end to the SSD. Make sure to connect the SATA cable in the motherboard SATA port 1. Now let's move on to the motherboard power supply connection from the PSU. So this is a 28 pin connector from the PSU, and the motherboard has a 28 pin connection in the motherboard itself. So this is the main power supply and the pin name is ATX power 1. Here we have a two 8 pin connectors. Both are different if you look closely. One is for CPU power connection and another one is for PCIe power connection. Make sure to double check the connector labels before inserting it to the motherboard. So this is the 8-pin CPU connector which connects to the CPU power one in the motherboard. Now let's connect the SATA power supply to the SSD, which is near to the SATA port of the SSD. I am doing this PC build due to the improper connection of the PCIe power to the CPU socket. So make sure to check it. Now let's install the graphics card. Since the CPU does not have a inbuilt GPU, we have to use a discrete one. So this is a GeForce GTX 650, which is from the previous build. Make sure the PCIe clip is locked on the GPU. Now let's insert the main power supply to the PSU. Make sure that the main power supply is earthed properly, or else if you touch the PSU you will get a shock. Now let's connect the VGA cable to the GPU for our display output. After connecting all the components to the motherboard, now let's switch on the PSU and turn on the motherboard using a tester. Now the fans are started running, but it will turn off and it will turn on again. Since it is the first time it is starting, it is initializing all the components. It seems like my graphics card does not support graphics output protocol, so it is asking for us to enter the setup or else continue. So it will try to boot from the SSD, but there is no OS in the SSD, so it is asking for us to select a proper boot device. So we have to reboot the system. So while rebooting, you have to press Del or whichever key for the motherboard for entering into the setup. After entering into the setup, you will have a similar screen to your motherboard. So for MSI, this is a Click BIOS setup center. where you will have all the options for each and every components connected to the motherboard like CPU, memory, storage and fan. So you can have a in-depth details like in memory options. You can also see in which RAM slot the RAM is installed and the frequency of the RAM that is currently running. If you go to the storage, you can see the capacity of the SSD that is installed. So this is the overall bench testing. So if all the components are initialized properly and it's all working, you can proceed to install it in the PC case or cabinet. Subscribe for more upcoming videos. Thank you.